Let's look at our second round rules as we go into this. Everything gets doubled. A great take gives you 400 points. A good take gives you 200 points. An okay take gives you 100 points. And a bad take, you come home empty-handed once again with 0 points. In Kansas City, where we had major controversy with the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, some crazy stuff. So the Chiefs were down 3 points, 20-17, late in the fourth quarter with about a minute to go. They pull off a crazy lateral play from Kelsey to Kadarius Toney to score what looked to be potentially the game-winning touchdown, but it was called back to an offensive offsides on Kadarius Toney. And Patrick Mahomes was certainly not happy about this. He darn near attacked a ref, and Andy Reid and Mahomes and everybody were attacking the officials after the game. Now, Mahomes has walked back his comments to a certain degree today, but nonetheless, the Chiefs were not happy whatsoever. So I'll start with you, Mike Guido. Are the Kansas City Chiefs justified in their criticism of the officials in this game?
No, I really don't think that this is an argument. Now, listen, NFL referees have relationships with players, and they say, hey, listen, back up an inch, make sure you're legal, and they do all of that stuff on certain occasion. But you're late in the game. You have to make sure that you're lined up properly and you're not giving your team a reason to lose unnecessarily, right? Now, I think most of the frustration came from the Chiefs made a great offensive play, which, quite frankly, they don't make a lot of right now this year. They just don't, right? They don't. They don't have receivers that separate. This is an offensive line that has not been as good as we've seen in years past. This is right now a very defense-focused Kansas City Chiefs team. So they finally get that big breakout play, and it gets called out because of a mental mistake, right? I just think, listen, I understand that referees and players sometimes have relationships and stuff like that, and it kind of can favor you on the field in some sense, where the referee can give you a little bit of a break for something that minor. But in a big situation like that, that's just something you can't have happen. So no, there's no real gripe that should be had right here with any NFL officiating, at least in this instance. No.
Well, I certainly agree with you. I will say this, and I posed this on my show yesterday, carving it up, that there is a potential. This is just a theory that I have. This may or may not be true. I think Mahomes' outburst and the Chiefs being as pissed off as they were, I think they knew that in years past, if it's second down and 15 midfield, they can get that in one play with their explosiveness. I think Patrick Mahomes knew that was Kansas City's last punch in that game. That at that point it was over. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think that factored in as well. Yeah. And obviously, second straight loss, and I believe 3 losses out of the last 4. So frustrating, certainly mounting for the Chiefs. Now to you, Adam. Do you think the Chiefs' outrage with the officials was justified?
The only thing that it justified was all the fantastic post-game memes that have come out from it. I mean, the fact that Patrick Mahomes has to be held back yelling at the refs, and even when going to center field and meeting with Josh Allen, and you're not even like saying good game, you're talking about how bad that call was. Clearly, Kadarius Toney was eating the defensive back that was across from him. He was like they were making out. He was that far over the line of scrimmage. It was absolutely ridiculous. So, you know what? I get it, where they could seem frustrated in the moment, but like, you're a professional football player. You're never supposed to be offside. The refs telling you or giving you a warning is a courtesy, okay? It's not a right. And Andy Reid saying the things like, usually they come by and give me warnings, and in big games like this, they tell us. It's like, they don't have to do that though. So there is rules for rules' sake, and again, it's the common courtesy of the ref to kind of check you out and let you know. But it's not. It's the player who made the infraction, and they're now going to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, they are
not justified. Not justified.
I do. Again, I do agree with you. And I think one big thing too is, and I mentioned this on my show as well. I think it was Greg Jennings I heard say this. Like a big factor why the ref maybe didn't communicate with Kadarius Toney is because he was lined up inside in the slot. So he would have had to, especially listen. The Chiefs, the Arrowhead is not going to be loud when the Chiefs are on offense, but it's still late in the game. The intensity is building. It's going to be hard to kind of yell, "Hey, 19, get back on sides." Maybe it's even hard to see from that vantage point, or not the offsides, obviously, but for Toney in general to be within earshot. So you make some good points. But Adam, I'm also going to give you a great take of 400 points right here to put you again tied with Mike Guido at the top. I thought that was good. And of course, we love some good-natured humor on the 8 o'clock spot. So I always give points for that. We always want to have fun here. To Dalton Brown, were the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes, Andy Reid in particular, were they justified in their criticism and their outrage of the officials?
No, of course not. I mean, look, this at the end of the day, this is Fury that is more turned inward, I think, than we got to see post game. I think there's a lot of emotion in that situation. There's a lot of competitiveness that spills over in ways that's not always pretty. I don't really hold that against an athlete. I think that's heat of the moment type stuff. That being said, Kadarius Toney's a known bozo. Like, this isn't news. This guy's been a bozo his whole career, and the Chiefs right now have a receiving core full of bozos, and it's the reason they're going to have to play road games in the playoffs this year, something Mahomes is not familiar with doing. This offense right now is pretty mid. They've scored 21 points once in their last 5 games, or excuse me, more than 21 points once in their last 5 games. They don't have very much explosiveness downfield. Everything they're doing is underneath, and Mahomes doesn't have a whole lot of time. And honestly, if Pacheco, continues to be hurt or misses more time or suffers another injury, I think they're going to really struggle to move the ball. So look, to me, it's just not a huge story, right? I mean, the call was obvious. Tony was lined up in the slot. I'm glad you touched on that because that's something I was going to touch on. He was lined up in the slot. He gave a half-ass check. It is what it is, right? It's an obvious call. It's unfortunate. I understand why it's frustrating as a competitor with the Chiefs, but it is what it is, right? I mean, you line up a yard off sides, you're going to get called for it. So I'm sure that there have been conversations had with Kadarius Toney more than there have been with the league in the last couple of days.
No question about that. And Andy Reid sort of alluded to that in an interview yesterday. So that 100% matters. And yeah, Tony has been, you use the word bozo. That's probably an adequate word to describe because you could argue he blew the game in a big way against Detroit all the way back in week 1 with the drop that turned into a pick 6 with Brian Branch against the Lions. He also had some key drops after that. So, and I think he had a fumble the very next week against the Jaguars. So he has really struggled to basically not make mistakes, not screw things up. And listen, I thought when the Chiefs traded for this guy from the Giants, at least given what I'd seen from him at the University of Florida, I'm thinking, hey, there's another gadget that Mahomes and Andy Reid can use, and he simply has not panned out into that guy. And by the way, after a pretty good Super Bowl performance as well. To Dylan, finally, were the Kansas City Chiefs justified in their criticism and outrage of the officials?
I'm going to join all my panelists and say no, not justified at all. Without being a dead horse already, it's obvious. The penalty couldn't be any more obvious. And for Mahomes to whine and complain as much as he did, not only in the moment after the game, but also in the post-game press conference, I just don't feel bad. This is the same team that we saw early in the season where their offensive tackles were jumping off sides every single play, and the refs were just swallowing their whistle. So now, miraculously, when the right call was made, now you're going to cry and complain. I have no sympathy. It just falls on deaf ears to me. I'm seeing fans online talking about, oh, the heat of the moment, this is such a great play, why are you going to take this away from the Chiefs? It's like, do you want the WWE or do you want an actual competitive sport as the NFL? Because if we're going to just play make-believe and play fantasy football where it's like, oh, that was a cool play, we're going to count that despite, the wrongdoings then what are we doing here? This is not competitiveness. This is not the game that we all love. And, quite frankly, I get the frustration where I think especially Mahomes, he's watching his team disintegrate around him, especially on the offensive side of the field. And too bad, you got to learn how to line up properly. And hopefully you learn that in the next coming games and you turn this around. But the fact that Mahomes has to walk back and make an apology, he knows he's in the wrong. So I don't see why there should be anyone, in favor.
Yeah, that's fair. First of all, before I get to you and respond to you, Dylan, I forgot to put up your point total, Dalton. I did give you a great take, so you get the 600 points there. So you were tied right now at the top with Adam and with Mike. And that's interesting. A point you bring up, Dylan, is the fact that we let the play and the outcome of the play or a potential outcome affect how maybe we see the offsides. I've always had a rule that in the last 5 minutes of especially a basketball game or a football game, don't call anything. Don't throw a flag. Don't call a foul if we're talking about hoops unless it's completely obvious. And in that case, it was. His foot was clearly offsides, and it was an obvious call, and the officials made the correct call. Dylan, I'm going to give you a great take here, so get you to 500 points. So very, very, very good stuff. It's very tight here as we go in the third round. We got some comments here right now. Oh, wow, the Cam fan guys, I think they're making fun of Mahomes. They put the frog emoji. I think that's a Kermit reference, which is, of course,
I'm right here.
To Patrick's voice. Let's see. We got some more stuff from Bear. Barry. He says Patrick Mahomes need a manager like Paul Heyman because I can't hear him talk anymore. Wow. He's just going at the guy. He says wide receivers need to check with the refs every play. Tony has idiot brain, an all-even podcast classic, and they are not a deep playoff team this year. The crying is weak. Instead of taking more money from the Chiefs, Mahomes need to give some back to get some talent. Fire the NFL scout too. Man's name must be Rubbish Robertson, VP of scouting. Wow, this is just taking shots at everybody right now. It's rough.
Is Barry trying to get points by by points even when he's not on the panel?
I rarely know Barry's goals, Adam. So your guess is just as good as mine. But Barry, you're not getting points on the show that you're not participating in. But listen, he is actually about to say he was the points leader, but that's Mike. So listen, we got a long ways to go. And Alonzo Diaz in the comments says the Cowboys suck. Wow, that's
original Alonzo.
And he also
thanks
says,
for coming in.
For sure. Chiefs have won more Super Bowls than the Cowboys in the past 12 months, and the Cowboys have in the last 20 years. Well, it's hard to win more Super Bowls than a team in the last 4 months. I hate to tell you.
Learn how to frame a sentence first, Alonzo, and go cry with Mahomes. But thanks for coming in and tuning into the Grid Network. Keep commenting; it helps the algorithm there, pal.
It does. There's no question about that. And all press is good press, they say, right?
Alonzo, I'm right here.
Gosh, shots fired at our very loyal listeners and viewers. This is brutal.